Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my review on TaylorJenkins' Reid 2022 release, Carrie Soto is Back, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5. Before I go into my full book review, I always like to do a Booktuber Shoutout. Today's Booktuber Shoutout goes to the Book Bladder. How I came across his channel is because he started the Booktube Kindness Tag, which is a uplifting video where people go around and tag booktubers that they enjoy, that are positive, and that kind of stuff. So if you want to check out his channel to spread the kindness and give him some subscriptions, I will link his channel down below. And as always, before I go into my full book review, I always appreciate it if you can hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have read this book, Carrie Soto is Back, please comment down below what you think because I really enjoyed it, but I can see how this book could be a hit or a miss for people. So I'm really keen to see what you thought if you read down below. As I mentioned earlier, this book was published this year in 2022, and the genre is fiction, and I would put specifically sports fiction. If you want to be specific, it's tennis. I also saw online that this book is considered historical fiction. I don't know if I really agree with that because while there are real people mentioned in this book, like Princess Diana and Cameron Diaz, a lot of the main characters and the players in the books aren't like actual people. And I know historical fiction does have like fiction and made up people, but because this is set in tennis and like actual like big tennis tournaments, there's obviously a lot of like made up stuff. So I wouldn't put it as historical fiction. I would put it in just general fiction. TaylorJenkins Reid, she is an American author. She was born in Maryland in the US and she moved to LA to work in film where she met her husband, Alex Jenkins Reid, who's a screenwriter, and they now have a daughter. So even though she went to LA for a film, she actually now is an author. She did, however, co-write a Hulu television show called Resident Advisors. If you heard of it, it premiered in 2015. And her debut novel was in 2013. It was called Forever Interrupted. I haven't read it yet, but her big break, at least from what I can see, is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which came out in 2017. And since then, she's written also Malibu Rising, I believe it's called, or just Malibu, Daisy Jones and the Six, and also this book, Carrie Soto's Back. So these four books are kind of known as her big hits. And last year in 2021, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is actually one of my top 10 books. So I really love her writing. I'm a fan, and this one for me did not disappoint. Now I'll get into the premise of the book. So we start with Javier, who is the dad of the main character, Carrie Soto, and he is Argentinian and he is a tennis player. And he's pretty successful in his career, except he gets a knee injury, so he actually retires. Then he moves to America for a better opportunity, and he meets his wife, and they have Carrie Soto. And basically, from the day Carrie is born, he believes that Carrie is destined to be a tennis player. So at a very early age, as soon as she's able to, he starts training her, starts coaching her. And basically, long story short, she is actually quite successful in tennis and becomes the youngest woman to win the most, like, I think, Grand Slam titles in the tennis world. And she's also kind of known as being very cold. She doesn't befriend the other players. And her name is the Battle Axe because she is just really tough. And so basically, she's super successful, and then she retires. As you know what athletes do, they don't have a long career age. So I think she retires in her late 20s or like 31. And then in her retirement, she's just enjoying life. But then it turns out that there is an up and coming tennis player who's also in the women's competition, Nikki Chan, and she's going to steal Carrie's undefeated, or I guess, title of winning most Grand Slams. So Carrie Soto, who's now 37, is still able to physically play tennis. So she comes out of retirement to try to claim her title back. So this book really is a redemption story focused in tennis. And TaylorJenkins Reid does a really great job, even if you're not familiar with tennis or follow like Wimbledon and all that kind of stuff. She does a really good job breaking it down to layman's term and explaining what tennis is like. And this really is about a woman who, Carrie, who kind of hasn't accepted that she has, I guess, like aged out, but also is inspiring to see that she's willing to put herself out there, to be vulnerable and try to claim back what's hers. It's just a really great story, and like, I don't know, it's very inspiring. And yeah, I'm surprised that When I first started the book, I was kind of hesitant because I'm like, oh, there's like a sports book. I'm not really a sports person. But I found I got like really wound into the story, and also seeing Carrie change as a person from being a battle axe, from like not making friends, and seeing her growth and seeing her rivalry with Nikki Chan and how she uses her competition to fuel her, to train better, to train harder. And it's just like a really great story. I think also really great if you love sports movies and seeing someone come back who is an underdog or coming out of retirement to claim the throne. Common themes I found in this book. Number one is perseverance. It's not about being the best in the competition, but just being the best that you can be, and everything else, don't worry. It's about going out there, hitting the balls, practicing, drilling, being disciplined, and knowing that if you put in the work, then the rest will follow. The other common theme I found is about living in the moment and kind of like I guess adds on to what I just said earlier about not being the best objectively, but being the best that you can be. Because that's something that you can control. Another common one is, as I said, Carrie's kind of known as kind of this cold-hearted, doesn't make friends in the tennis tour and that kind of stuff. And it's just about letting your walls down and just being vulnerable. And it's okay to let people in and don't always push people out. And yeah, so those are common themes I found throughout the book. There were two themes I didn't like in the book. Number one was the protagonist, Carrie, because she kind of is seen as kind of cold-hearted and kind of like a bitch, and they actually call her a bitch in the book, is that sometimes I find her very insufferable and really hard to relate to. And even Bo, who is her love interest in the book, he calls her out a few times, and it's really painful to see her just so stuck in her ways. Other thing I found, but I don't know if it's because it's the version I got, so I actually turned out to get the large print version, is in the book, there's lots of like randomly bolded words throughout the book, and I'm not sure why that was. At first, I thought they randomly bolded any Spanish dialogue, but I found later it was just random words that were bolded, and I found it very distracting. So if you read the non-large print version, let me know if it's just because I got the large print version. Things I like in this book is, even though this is a sports book and redemption arc for Carrie's character back into her professional tennis career, is at the bottom of it, I find there's two arcs that I really enjoyed, which was the father-daughter relationship. I don't really have a relationship with my father, so it's really nice to see it in this book and just see it be so healthy and just see them really supportive and have great communication. I also love Carrie's development through the book, and I also love the rivalry between Carrie and her tennis nemesis Nikki and how their relationship progresses in the book as well. I also love the callback to Bo, who is her love interest, where they crossed paths years ago or maybe even decades ago, and they reunite, and how they have changed, live their own life separately in adulthood, and cross paths. Another thing I really like is that I mentioned earlier that this is kind of like historical fiction, because they actually name drop some parallels that happen in reality. So they name Cameron Diaz. They talk about the Before Sunrise movie in the 90s. They talk about Princess Diana. So I really like how there were some aspects of truth sprinkled throughout this book. That was nice to see. Other thing I really like is, as I mentioned, Javier, their dad, is Argentinian. And so in the book, when him and Carrie have one-on-one conversations, there is a lot of Spanish seamlessly in the book, sprinkled throughout the whole book. And I have very basic Spanish understandings, and I really enjoyed it because I think, like, in reality, lots of people have multi languages in their household. Instead of making it all anglicized into English, TaylorJenkins Reid did a really cool job putting it throughout the book, and not having translation. So yes, it may be sometimes if I didn't understand it, I would be forced to look at a translation, but I really enjoy that, to have the exposure to a different language, but not too much of it either. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.28 out of 5. I think it's very accurate. This book has just come out this year, and there's a lot of hype around it, so maybe in a few years it'll go down, but I think it's a great book. I can see it aging very well. So bad reviews were people thought Carrie was very one-dimensional. As I mentioned earlier, I found her a bit insufferable at several points during the book, and people agreed with that. People thought she was too egotistic, and she was really just a tennis machine. She wasn't really a character, and she wasn't changing. Also, people thought there's too much Spanish in the books. But I disagree with that. I think it's nice to have a different language in the book. You can use Google Translate. I can see how Carrie seems one dimensional and not really changing, but I think it's very subtle the way she changes, and it's not like a 180 change. It's like it slowly changes over time, and you really have to see that maybe she's not like doing these grand gestures to change, but internally she's making the changes. So I disagree with those reviews. Good reviews, and I want to share this. It's a quote from one of the reviewers on Goodreads is, "TaylorJenkins Reid is the creator of epic, unforgettable heroines and queens of fascinating historical fictions. Help us travel time and experience the vivid images, daily lives, true cultures of different time zones where we want to spend more time and never return to reality." I love it because I think it's totally true. This is my second TaylorJenkins Reid book, and I think she does a really great job of escapism. You get so sucked in, you want to know what's going to happen next, and it's rooted in reality because there's some aspect of like Cameron Diaz or Princess Diana and like actual places, and like it's I think it's her writing is really good, and yeah, I really loved it. Why I think you should read this book? I think you should read it if you like TaylorJenkins Reid. I think it holds up to Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo for me is slightly better, but this is just as good. If you like comeback story, redemption stories, if you love books about a father-daughter relationship, it's really good. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because one thing I love to ask people if they recommend a book to me is how it made them feel, because in a week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember what a book was really about, but I remember how it made me feel. So this book, at the end of it, it made me feel rejuvenated. Like I really felt Carrie's struggles. I really feel, I really was there with her for all his tennis matches, and I was really sucked in. So at the end, I felt rejuvenated. I feel if I ever need to come back in anything in my life, I can do it. I'll put myself out there. I'll put in the work. I have no example right now of anything I need to come back from, but this book made me feel invigorated, rejuvenated to do that if I ever need to. Thank you for watching until the end of my review for Carrie Soto is Back by TaylorJenkins Reid. If you read this book, please comment down below or what you thought of it. Did it live up to the hype? And if it didn't, let me know why. And if you want to join me next time, I am reading a nonfiction by Christina Lamb called The Prince Rupert Hotel for the Homeless. This is a recent nonfiction that talks about a hotel in the UK called Prince Rupert, where they opened their doors for the homeless during the COVID pandemic and housed 33 people from the streets. And it's kind of cool. I have no idea what to expect, but I hope it is a heartwarming story. As always, thank you for watching my video. We made it till the end, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.